So we're going to start with, Connor and I are going to be teaching Premiere, and then May and Miriam will be going through Adobe After Effects.
All right, so everybody just open up your Premiere file, your folder. You'll see I have a bunch of stuff here. That's fine. Yours should be blank, but it should be laid out the same way as you see here. So there should be, you should have a workspace. Then there's this window that has 3 tabs: your source, your effect controls, and your audio. Then here is basically your kind of layers of the files that you'll be using within your Premiere or movie file. And then down here we have a few more tabs. Mainly this is your effects. You also have your history tab over, so everything that has kind of occurred, similar to Photoshop. And then this is the timeline, which also similar to Final Cut Pro, and Terry touched on it. So you have the video and you have your audio. So basically the first thing we should do is you guys want to bring in some content. So there's basically 2 ways you can do it. So the first one is you can go File Import, and then what I have given you is there was 2 movie files. So MVI, either or will work for now. And just click one in. I already have the 2 here, so they should show up over here. And so just open one now, because I'm actually going to show you another way of uploading content or getting content from your computer into Premiere, which is through drag and drop. So it's pretty basic too. Pretty common for, I'll say, Mac users, the drag and drop. And so we'll grab the other one, and then you can just drag it and drop it. It's going to give me a message that I already have it loaded, or it actually came up twice. That's fine. Cool. So both your movie videos should be on this side. And then what I want you to do is, as Terry also talked about earlier, you kind of have that, you have certain info about your movie that you brought in, and that will tell you the size of video that you're making. These are 1080i files. So what I want to do is go File, New Sequence, and then this is going to come up, and then under HDV we have 1080i, and I've got it on the 60i here. This is all going to be pertinent to whatever, or relevant to whatever types of files you're using. But yes, it's important that you're probably going to be working at closer to what your smallest video file is going to be, and then having other things compressed down. But because these are the same size, this is fine. You'll see at the bottom sequence name. So I'm just going to call this Formlab Tutorial. So then basically what you'll see now is that I created a new sequence, and the stuff that I had open before is gone. That's because it's in these other sequences. They're both, keep it within that. So then you can start organizing your files and work on different pieces at a time, which is what Terry touched on earlier too. So now we're going to go to our Formlab tutorial. Well, you guys will only have the one. So then what we can do is grab one of these files, and just, you can drag and drop it into your timeline. So I put it onto video 1. You'll see yours probably will be really small like this too, but we have this mountain slider. So if we bring that over, the timeline zooms in to a much smaller period of the timeline. So you're now looking at basically about 6 seconds of video, rather than what it originally was sitting at, which is like 5 minutes. So that way you can kind of really hone in on the area you're working on. And so then we'll now see that it is open over here on the right. And then there's a whole bunch of little buttons over here. And then so you can kind of just hit play and test, see how it works. I always like to make sure that things are working okay, so it seems fine. So then just drag it back, and that's kind of bringing images in, video pieces in. So I'm looking at video clips. Saran will talk about more working with image clips and a few other concepts. So I'm going to go over now just basically if you want to put an image overlay into Premiere. So I don't have one specifically in my folder, but I'm going to steal one from Saran's folder. So I'm going to grab just one of these frame TIFFs and import it in. So it should show up again like I showed you over here. And this can also be, even though it's a still image, can be dragged into the video. And so then you'll see now that they're overlaid. And so this is basically really primitive, starting to layer up a video file. So you have an underlay of motion, and then you can also put an image over top. So like I could imagine this being like maybe you have some content, and then you have graphs that start to form tables, whatever. If you're doing a case study, diagrams, who knows, like sky's the limit. What Premiere isn't necessarily good for is animating sequences like that, which is why we're going to touch on After Effects, because it's much stronger for that kind of aspect of things, which will happen later. So I'm going to go over some just basic effects on how we can change these things. So basically, you see when I click into one of these, so I just clicked on this one, and now it's up here, which is not what I wanted to have happen. So I just FZ, bring that in, and then you go to Effect Controls, and you'll see that there are these little subheadings underneath video effects. So right now we have motion, opacity, and time remapping. So if we go, we can drag along here with the blue key, and now we have the image here, and you can see in the frame that right now this diagram is a little bit big and it's bleeding off the side, so we can't see the whole thing. So if we go into motion, we can actually just see these all of these orangish yellow numbers. When you hover over one, you'll see that there's an arrow basically indicating that you can toggle it. And so I'm going to just drag it towards my left, and you'll see that now the diagram is smaller within my screen. There are a few other ones here that you can check out. So like if we wanted it a little bit to the right or the left, you can play with the position, and then so it's like an X and Y plane. So the second one would move it up and down. And then we also have opacity, which, so if I wanted this thing to be a little bit more faded on the surface, that can happen. So then when we play it through, it shows up, and then the video keeps playing with it overlaid. Next, just to show how then we could work from one video clip to another, grab the other video from up here on the sidebar and drag and drop into our final, not final, but the third video tab. So then what you can do is you see that when you slide these things and toggle them around, they'll actually kind of have smart lineups, so they will hook on like magnets, I guess, to things that might be key moments and where you want things to line up. And so here it's asking me if I want to put it at the end of that TIFF, but I'm actually going to line it up just for now over here. And so then when this one video clip ends, the other one begins. So this is straightforward. As we go through, we're going to build up, and then we'll see how to do a little bit more, I'll say, advanced techniques of how we can fade these things in and out, similar to what Terry showed for Final Cut Pro. So the next thing I'm going to do is talk about just briefly cutting files. So say we don't really want this whole video of me looking around outside the school. Just hit C, and you should see that your mouse is now, it kind of looks like a razor blade. And if you want, wherever you want to make a cut, you just click, and then now if you hit V, it'll turn back into your mouse, and you can take this second part and you can drag it, you can move it around, put it wherever you want, delete it if you don't need it, etc. So you can do that as many times as you want. So I could cut this thing up all over, and then I can start working with smaller and smaller pieces of the puzzle. I'm using CS5. None of these videos have audio yet. You have audio on my videos? This is filmed with no audio. So there is no audio on this track. That's why you don't see anything in audio. I think that's the standard setting on a lot of DSLRs. That's exactly, well, that was what happened with this one. I just kind of like went and shot, which is fine because it probably would have just been like white noise, which is helpful, I guess. You don't have to delete it. Anyways, as you see, even though I've cut it a bunch of time, it still is going to work smoothly while these clips are beside each other, like because I haven't broken them apart. If I wanted to pull this out, then we're probably going to see that here where there's nothing happening, it's going to be black. The way you can stop it quickly is if you're testing through, going through your video, checking for continuity. Spacebar basically pauses and unpauses, so that's not a bad little tool to know. Moving forward, the next thing that I'll just do is I'm going to click on one of these pieces I've cut, and we're going to see that just like in the image, we have the video effects again with motion, opacity, and time remapping. So now we're going to look at, for now, time remapping. So if you open this up and you have a video clip, basically you can okay. This was working. You should be able to slow down the video. Maybe this is it. Can you? Oh yeah. There's also, you can do it this way, which is a lot easier. You can right click on the clip and then you can kind of put it in. The only sort of, I'd say, slight disadvantage of this is that you'd have to go back in and it's not as toggling as easily because it's not going to preview while you're going through it. So I can slow this down, but if I want it at like 50, so then that, you'll see that it also extends out. So it becomes twice as long because it's taking up now twice as much space. And then you'll see that this slows right down. So that's, you can kind of do that for a whole bunch of different ones, especially if you wanted to focus on a certain moment within a frame. You'll see that this is still kind of really rigid in the way that it's responding. When Saran goes through, he'll explain the keyframes a little bit more in depth, which will show how to do these smooth transitions so that you don't have such harsh transitions between different clips. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is, you saw I was playing down here briefly. I'm going to go back down here, and I'm just going to show you how to, if we wanted to, say you had a video that you took from YouTube or something, and you wanted to reference it, but you didn't necessarily want it to stand out, you wanted it as a background. we can look at color correction as a means of desaturating. So I'm going to grab the fast color corrector. So that's video effects, color correction, and then fast color corrector. And so I grab that, and you'll now see that there's an extra drop down within this panel. And so then there's a whole bunch of different things we can play with, but for the time being I'm just going to go to saturation. And so then we turn that all the way down to 0. And so then if we bring this back to that portion, so now that's black and white. So we could do that even for this one too. There are tons and tons and tons of different options. As you can see, you have audio effects, video transitions, and then a whole bunch of drop downs within. So there's plenty of stuff to play around with. If you want to blur or sharpen something, you want to change the levels of the contrast, the buttons are available to you, and they all basically work on the same premise as pulling a slider toggle. So just the last thing I'll quickly touch on before Saran kind of tackles a different aspect of Premiere is bringing in an audio file, because this one doesn't. So I'm going to go File, Import again, or Apple I, and pick this random Scott file I have. So this is now on the list. Bring it over, drag and drop it in here. You can also see that these can be expanded or contracted, so they can be smaller if you're not working on that one right now. You can even, like, say you're looking at this and you're trying to edit the background, but you don't want to see this image on top. You can just turn the eyeball off, and it works very similarly to Photoshop. Most Adobe products work that way. And while I'm quickly touching on this, if you wanted to add another track, you just right click and then go add tracks, and then you can see that there's a whole bunch of options here. So hit OK, and now I just added another audio track and another video track. So what I did now is, I think if we play this, you can't really hear it, but even if you have a video, you should have audio now. If you added a track, you can add anything from your computer. I just grabbed a file that I have, actually. So then you can go within that, and then this is like basically the best place to turn up and down the volume. And then you can do very similar things to what we did with the video. So we can add it and remove certain parts. So yeah, I think that basically is what I'm going to talk about right now. And then Saran's going to go into the next level of Adobe Premiere.